Hello, and welcome to Through the Veil, where we get together to share stories and remember the wisdom that belongs to us. I'm Melissa Camruden, and in honor of Mother's Day, I've invited three wise women to come and just talk about the gifts that motherhood has brought us. First one is my own mother, who I bring all the big questions to. And then I've invited two good friends who I have mothered with, and who don't live close to me anymore, but who remain important friends and mothering connections in my life. Let's get right to it. Hello. Welcome everyone.
Hi.
So we have four of us here today that we could just start introducing ourselves and going down through our red threads. So Dominique, do you want to start?
Sure. My name is Dominique. I am the daughter of Sigrid, who is the daughter of Heide, who is the daughter of Elfrida, who is the daughter of Pauline, and who is the daughter of another lost mother who actually disappeared after the wall in Germany went up. And I have myself a daughter as well.
Thanks. Carly.
Hi, my name is Carly. I'm the daughter of Marilyn, the daughter of Anna Jane, and I have three kids ages 13, 12, and 7.
Thanks. Mom?
I am Jackie. I'm the daughter of Verna, who is the daughter of Ida. I have two daughters, Melissa, you being one of them, who is 38, and a younger daughter who is 35, and a stepson that is 58.
Yeah, true enough. So we just wanted to get together here and just talk about Mother's Day and the gift of being a mother and having a mother and what kind of things that's brought us in our life. Who has some opening thoughts?
I do.
I knew it.
I love being a mother and a grandmother. I have 5 beautiful grandchildren, and I have to say that going through the process of raising those kids, that the amount of consciousness that comes to that came to me at was overwhelming, like on so many occasions, so often daily actually, and it really wasn't until I matured as a mother where I could, as my age increased, my brain activity slowed down to the point where I could actually receive it more and really count what is important. And that means for me, that was like unpackaging what I understood about each of my children in order to understand what was going on in myself, because it's hard to see what's going on in yourself. And that is such a gift. It's necessary. There's lots of laughter, lots of tears, and lots of like, oh my gosh, how could I miss that? And since I've done that and entered in that journey, I would say my walk with my children is closer. And the more I go into it and unpackage that, the better grandmother I am. And the more joy I actually find in small things.
When would you say that that you talked about like a slowing down? Like when did that stage come for you?
It usually comes through pain. It usually comes through pain. At least it did for me in my life. And at first it was kind of shocking, and I would, like, I don't know, I would say when my children hit their I'm independent, I actually don't need you. And they actually don't need, they don't, when they get to that place where they didn't need me to feed them, to clothe them, to even buy their clothes, to even like whatever, to help them with their daily plan. When they get there, there's a struggle. There's a struggle because as a parent, I wasn't conscious of that, and as a teenager, they were highly conscious of that. And so it did cause struggle. And so at first that was kind of shocking. And so I was just kind of numb. And it really wasn't until uh, you guys got into your 20s that I really had to look, because it was much easier for you to draw boundaries with me and your dad. And that's really when you guys were in your 20s, probably even your mid to late 20s, where it really started setting into me like, whoa, I've okay, I've got to look here. What's going on? Like the messages that that I was getting on some levels were very positive, and the ones that were painful. It's kind of painful when your kids don't need you. It's kind of painful um, when they're adults, but you still see them as your children. And there are no courses for parents, really. Like, you've never, like every year, I mean, I've never been the parent to a 38-year-old before you. Never. And so it's like that. It's those stages. And I suppose some people never accept that stage, but it's so imperative and it's so rewarding. Doesn't mean it's not painful, but it is rewarding. So, yeah, I would, to answer your question, I would say probably once you guys got to your mid to late 20s, I really started taking inventory of what was going on and what my part was in in the things that would come up that weren't easy.
Yeah, I wonder how much, like, what the connection is between having children who enter their 20s and demand more space, and also moving through your own cycles of life, like moving out of the mother phase and into the wise woman phase. And maybe that gave you space for reflection even more than your children not accepting hand feeding anymore.
Yes, I I'm a hand feeder. Like,
I know it.
right? Unfortunately, but you know what? And that comes from a place of love, and I see that, and I know that now. Uh, and I'll tell you, once I accepted that, hey, I'll tell you what really hit me, and if I can use these words for me and my own spiritual um, understanding, is that when I realized, like fully, for example, you, Melissa, that your life is a gift to you from God Almighty to pick up and lay down as you will. I don't have I don't I don't have the say over your life. That's your life. I had my young years and I made my own decisions, and you have that right to, regardless of whether I agree or anybody else agrees or not. Once I really moved into that, and that had to happen with your dad first. I had to get there with your dad first, and then it was another step to go with you being, my oldest girl. Uh, yeah, and but once I got there, it was such a, like a weight lifted off. I was carrying something that wasn't mine to have, and it was it was it was an intrusion, and uh, and it was powered by my own insecurities and my own fears. And once I understood that, once I saw that hey, that's your life. You find, and you've got what it takes to find your way. And whatever that life is, and however that turns out, like, I love you more for that. I can love you now as a beautiful person, woman, adult, like with things so much more developed and than mine, and lots of things we share together. Yeah, no, it's been beautiful. Like, I love this stage. This is my favorite stage so far. And I probably say that at every stage, because that's all you have, right? It just gets better. But this stage, as an elder, I love it. It's my jam. I love it.
I think it's probably because you can embrace it, right? It's like when people fight to stay in the previous stage that it's hard. I'm guessing. I think that's true even with motherhood, right? When you see new mothers being like, oh, I was just had a podcast interview with someone who said her perception was parents are so boring when she was pregnant the first time. And she's like, oh, now I'm going to be one of those, right? Like that's the maiden speaking who's like hasn't embraced yet the next stage that comes, which of course she then does embrace and loves this stage now. And it's totally where it's at. I was just listening to or reading something from Jane Hardwick Collins, who I love. She's a wise woman in her 60s now, late 60s, I think. And she said that menopause is the time when everything you buried before comes back at you and you must look at it or you must medicate it, one or the other. Like it's going to be a struggle moving through it if you won't look at those things. And then she also said, this was so cool. She said that there are only 5 species on the planet that go through menopause. They're all mammals, and it's humans, and then the other 4 live in the ocean. It's like narwhals, killer whales, belugas, and another kind of whale.
Wow.
And that's it. And in those communities, the females that go through menopause become the leaders, and they're matriarchal cultures. And for all of them, except for ours. And they become the leaders of their community, of their pod. And that evidence shows that when the more matriarchal leaders those pods have, the longer their sons and daughters live and the more their grandchildren thrive.
Yes, that's cool. Like I saw a little short reel once saying that exact thing, and that is so cool. Mm-hmm. That is so cool. Yeah, no.
And I think of our childhood, growing up, and really I had a community of mothers, plus a grandmother, and there was a lot of matriarchal influence and leadership in our family units and friends. And when I look at my childhood from that perspective, and I consider that, it's very rare to find people that were raised with that sort of matriarchal community that I grew up with, whether they were, heart family or blood family, it didn't matter. At the end of the day, they were family, and they looked out and provided wisdom and guidance. And so, in a lot of ways, like my mom didn't have to completely mother by herself, and same with the other moms. And it was, even growing up as kids together, it was just this beautiful community. And I can see we're having that matriarchal leadership. It makes a difference. It adds a grounding almost. And it's not to take away from the fathers and the work that they do. It just often the value is never really seen with how much emotional labor mothers put into rearing their family and those that are around them. And so many women are mothers even without giving birth because they bring children into their homes. Mm-hmm. They create community simply in whatever community areas that they're connected to, and it lends that wisdom and that leadership to those rearing up within those communities.
I would say, like, thank you for what you just said there, Dominique, because it just brought to my mind that, like, I know when I visit my children and I'm there with my grandkids, I know, like, I'm so much more conscious as a nana and as an elder to create space where we're all fitting in it, and creating that space where it's calm, where it's just, okay. And like, I intentionally want to connect with each person, letting them know that they belong to that space. Where as a mom, that, that was never in my consciousness. That was never. It was sort of like, okay, we do this, and now what's the next thing we have to do? That's what it was like for me and my poor children, and for them, particularly. But now it's like creating a space of just being calm, just breathe, just chill, just chill, just wait, stay. Stay is a word I use a lot with myself. Just stay with it. Don't try to fix it or solve it. Like, don't, just stay with it.
What are some other things motherhood has brought to you?
I have this thing I keep telling myself, is that motherhood is a mirror that I consistently have to look into. Um, raising my child, and I do have stepchildren, but they are already raised, so I don't influence them as much in that way. But raising her shows me all of the things that I didn't realize I carried, or I had, or I was aware of. And really, through that journey of seeing myself through her, I've had to confront the stories I have told myself about myself. And one story that comes into mind is I was walking through a store with her one day, and it was ironically a bit before Mother's Day, and there's this beautiful display of Mother's Day cards. And you know, I don't know if every mother does this, but every now and then you want to stoke your ego, right? And there's a card that's like, oh, world's best mother. And I was like, oh, isn't that a beautiful card? I wonder who you'd give that to. Just totally setting myself up, And my daughter looks at me and she goes, well, I wouldn't give it to you. And I said, what? She's like, why not? You're not the best mom for me. And it was said with such seriousness. And it was just kind of shocking and very hurtful. Like, I can see your guys' face. Like, yeah, exactly that times a billion. And, we had a conversation about how words hurt and everything else like that. But where I'm going with this is actually one of the stories I've told myself throughout my entire life is that I'm not enough. I'm not enough. I'm never good enough. I'm never whatever enough. And so for her to confirm a story I have self-flagellated with in this little unaware 8-year-old way was probably the biggest knock I ever had. And I dealt with it and came to realize and recognize to put my burden of a story that I've told myself that isn't true. It isn't true. I am the best mother for her, and she knows it, and I know it, and she shows me that daily, daily, when she wants to snuggle first thing in the morning, when she needs a snuggle before she goes to bed, otherwise she doesn't sleep well, when she's telling me about her day and she's trusting me with her secrets, when she, as a little 8, 9-year-old, is coming to me for advice with how to deal with her friend dynamics. She's telling me in her own way, I am the best mother for her. And in that moment, I don't know whether she's trying to be funny. I don't understand really, but I know that the word she said was not actually what she meant. And yet I carried it and I held that burden, and I had to face this thing in the mirror where I was using her words to prove to myself that what I've been telling myself all these years was correct. And putting that on her. And this mirror just made me go, wait, you got to stop. Like, who's the adult here? She's learning how to communicate. She's learning how to use her words. She's learning how to use sarcasm, jokes, whatever was going on. As an adult, my burdens, my insecurities are not her responsibility to prove. And having to face that or disprove, and having to face that in that moment was just
Yeah.
big. It's big. Because
Yeah.
kids say hurtful things, they do
Yeah.
things, and they make you face things about yourself you don't want to face. And just recognizing that.
Your vulnerability in facing that and speaking that out and unpackaging it. Brené Brown says that vulnerability is the birthplace to creativity, imagination, and change. Growth, actually.
Yeah.
I
And
thought
then what a gift to the next generation, right? That blessing, she got to watch you work through that. Whether you did it alone or not, kids know when they trigger something, they know. And like, rather than expecting her to fix your feelings, right? Making her responsible for how you felt about that, which was actually about how all the things you'd carried from before her. To take it on yourself, like think what things she can do now, right? That she knows she's responsible for her own things too, right? And she knows how to work it through because she's seen it done.
Yeah. On that same, sorry, go ahead.
No, I wasn't going to say anything.
On that same kind of thread of the mirror, I have a 13-year-old daughter who looks exactly like me, and she is exactly like me. And that has been an interesting thing as she's going into adolescence. Just this pulling away that's happening, but also this coming to terms that we're the same. And I was looking at a picture of her and just noticing all the things that are so much physically the same as me. And I was like, the reason I don't want to be in pictures with my children or with myself is I see this face shape that I don't love. And then I was looking at a picture of Ellie and I was like, oh, that is the same exact face shape. And I love pictures of her. What is going on? And so it's been like this coming to terms of realizing, I guess, who I am and what is beautiful about me that I haven't accepted. And, you want your daughter to accept herself, but you don't see yourself the same way until you see them.
Yeah. And I think often, like very often, daughters see themselves as their mothers, right? Even if mothers that you think you don't look like them, I think daughters always see themselves as their mothers. You can always see in your own face your mother's face, right? And then reflect on, what does your mother think about her body, right?
Yeah.
And then,
Well, and that's one of those things that I remember, when I found out I was pregnant, I went through some really drastic swings as to what I was hoping blessing was going to be. Well, what if she's a girl? Oh goodness, a girl. What if she's a boy? Oh goodness, a boy. And all the things that come with either or. And when I knew that she was going to be a female spirit, I told myself, I need to demonstrate to her, even if I don't feel it, I need to demonstrate to her love of self so that she learns to not pick herself apart from me. And I do. It's something I remember, and I know I've talked with my mom about this, and we've talked generationally, even with my grandmother about this, and how my mom would talk about her weight, or she would talk about things that she didn't appreciate about herself, and for as a little girl, I remember looking at her and thinking she was the most beautiful woman on this earth, and honestly, and if she saw those things about her, then I need to make sure I never get those things. I don't want the stomach like this. I don't want to have a double chin. I don't want to have all these things, because those things aren't beautiful, because those were things that maybe, were demonstrated that weren't beautiful. And so when I found out that I had a little girl, I thought, I can't do this. Even if I have those insecurities, I cannot speak them out. I cannot act them out. I cannot carry that in a way she can see it. And maybe she still senses things from me, but she does not see me standing on a scale every single day. I have never once picked apart my body where I've said, oh, I wish my body looked this, or I have this, or I need to lose weight, or I need to whatever. And it's not to say I don't say, being healthy and having good habits and eating and all those things, we raise them up in that way. But it's, if my daughter looks at me the way I look at my mother, and then compares that to herself, I need for her to see herself as worthy and as beautiful. And I like how you said that. If I I love my daughter's face, so how could I not love mine? Like that, what a moment of just awareness. And it's interesting, just it's interesting how that mirror just consistently comes, and whether it's a
Mm-hmm.
retroactive mirror from what we've learned from our mothers or a forward mirror from what we're learning from our kids, you know?
Mm-hmm.
This is so important to talk about these things. Like, I'm 66 years old. I still today deal with feelings of inadequacy about my looks, about my body, about my capacities and my incapacities. It's still there. And I wasn't at your age, in my 30s, unpackaging this with my buddies or with other women. You know what we talked about? Like, when I was at your stage, we talked about fitness. That's what we talked about. We talked about, you know, like food and fitness, not food and fitness for what's going on in my mind and my heart, and how I'm projecting that on to my children and all the other little people that my kids are around too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it's so important to unpackage that, and really look at it. Really look at it,
Mm-hmm.
because all these things, they are stored in our bodies. All these beliefs, um, like a belief, your belief controls your brain, right? So the belief is an electrical signal that creates a chemical signal from your brain, which tells your cells something to do. Okay, and the computer, the main computer, is your brain, but your belief system runs that computer. So it's really important. So then when you think about all this, like all the things we're talking about, how do we translate that to children? What kind of conversations? It begs that question. Is it important that when we're sitting at the dinner table, that we have out loud about our children? And one principle, I think, is confess what you've believed about yourself to your children, age appropriately, of course, but do that. Let your children see your vulnerability. I think, like, today, if I could go back, if I could be 66 and begin to be a mother, right? Like, I would practice vulnerability with my children. I would teach them about vulnerability. I would teach them that they have everything they need to manage this emotion right now, right now. And that starts out, like, when they're really little, like my little precious Isaiah, who's 2 and who's like just full of so much energy. And his emotions are like right out loud, very loud, and they switch a lot. And that's what I be say. That's what I do say, I want to say to him is, honey, you've got everything you need. Mummy's right there, Nana's right here, Daddy's right here, and you've got everything you need, like, to express what you're feeling and to problem solve. That message constantly, you've got everything you need to solve this, because you've got this body of wisdom right here, and safety and security, and your creator gave you everything on the inside of you to access that. Like, that is an important message, and, like, not as deep as what I'm saying it, but to execute those principles, really important, really important. And even things like that, we store emotions in our body, and our beliefs trigger emotion, right? Just that principle, how far would that go if, like, from when they're just knee high to a grasshopper, we're teaching them about their emotional and spiritual selves, and how that plays out physically, and how that plays out emotionally, what they believe. Like, huge, huge. And what's really cool about this, you guys, is all three of you are in that place where you've got that opportunity. I didn't get that. I didn't know that. But I know this, and Melissa, you brought this up in your last comment, is that, like, my ceiling is your floor.
Mm-hmm.
Your ceiling is your children's floor. They spring off of that. And it's every day is opportunity for that. The great thing is that you're I mean, like some people don't have their parents living close, but so find that nana and papa, that grandma and grandpa that can speak into your children, that can create a space that's very different than the parental space.
Mm-hmm.
I'm already feeding things to my children like, okay, you guys, like Nana's here, and that's when fun begins. Like I don't have to be the one, the heavy hitter. I don't have to be the one to lay down the hammer anymore. Yahoo! I can now just act like a goofy nana with my grandchildren, and and go and find that. Your children need that. If you don't have one of your parents close to fill that, find one. Be intentional about it. It'll go a long way. It's such support for you. It just gives you time to create a little space to breathe as well. Like there's so many benefits all the way around.
Yeah, I think it becomes more clear, like the more children we add to our household, especially, that like I really think we were supposed to live intergenerationally. Like there's no way that 2 adults are sufficient to raise a family. Like it's just not. It's like way hard for both those people, and even just like people older than you to help to like who've had a little more perspective on it, who can kind of step back and see like we don't have to prophesy doom on the teenager's behavior. It's just a teenager being a teenager, or whatever is happening. But another gift of motherhood I think I've had in my life is mothering in community with other mothers. And so like Dominique, I think feel like you and I had that. Like we supported each other as single moms. Like taking care of each other's children and mothering each other's children, which was really nice for our kids too. Like especially, it's nice anyway, like whether you're partnered or not, but as single moms, that was a huge gift.
It's a huge deal.
Yeah. And then Carly, you and I got that chance too, like doing homeschool co-ops together. And like we've really mostly but then like back and forth in each other's lives. I mean, since like I think I met you when Garrett was like 1, right? When he was just turning 1, like 10 months or something.
Yeah, and I was just about to have my oldest, and so that was really important, that connection. And looking back, being able to say like, these people are still in your life, Ellie. Like these are still important women that you can go to if you need to talk about anything. And that's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think that's something that, like, in my experience, it stays forever. And, like, so Garrett, the oldest, got the biggest benefit of that. Like, I know for, any of the 3 of you, like, I think Garrett would feel pretty comfortable if he needed something that he would talk to any of you because of that, even though, like, I mean, Dominic, how many years has it been since we lived in the same town? Quite a few.
It's been like 5 or 6 now.
6, yeah.
And yet we
Carly,
still have a
3,
connection,
maybe.
you know?
Yeah.
He still
and we can still
me.
maintain those. That's right. Garrett still wants to say hi to you when you call. Yeah. And then just growing up, like Dominique, we grew up like in the same kind of family matriarchal dynamic that you were talking about. And yeah, I still know all those moms who are now grandmas, and I could still call them for something.
Well, and the beautiful part of that is it's become generational, because I can call like you Auntie Jackie or Auntie Margaret, and then I can also call the kids that I grew up with. So I can call you Mel if I need perspective, or Stephanie, or any of the other kids. And then now our kids, like Blessing, looks up to Garrett massively, loves and adores him, and Stephanie's little girls is best friends with B, and they talk. And so there's this, not just the benefit of the matriarchal motherhood and community we grew up in, but that intergenerational friendship that goes all ways. I'm known as auntie to your kids. You're known as auntie to my kids. There's all these connections all around, and it's just, as I said, it's I as I get older, I recognize how rare those sorts of connections really are. Not everybody has them, and how much we've benefited from them. And even I think the other thing we really benefited with, and I'm going to throw this in there, is because, yeah, I was a single mom for the first 3.5 years of Bee's life, and I benefited from a lot of community support. Um, and my daughter got the opportunity to build a beautiful friendship with my mom. Like, they're best friends. And so even now that we live 10 hours apart, um, B can call mama up any day on the tablet, on Messenger. Like, technology has just allowed that closeness to be maintained. And like, there are times she's on the thing for an hour, 2 hours, and I don't even know that they're talking about much. They're just hanging out. And because of that connection, that fostering, and that ability to just, like you said, Anjac, like, hold space, make it a safe space. You're included. They don't have to be talking about deep things. They just need to be connected. And B leaves that call feeling fed and supported and loved, even though there's a 10-hour gap between the two, you know? Those connections are so important, so very important.
And for your listeners' benefit, Melissa, so um, Melissa and Dominique's mothers, well, me and Dominique, and then another family. There were three of us of our families. We raised our children together.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like a lovely little group that it doesn't matter how much time will pass, you'll always have a sense of comfort with the kids of those families that we hung out with like every weekend with your mother Dominique, and then Margie and her family, and it was lovely. And then later, Carly, you came. Um, when Melissa had Garrett, well, it actually was Starbucks. I think you guys met at
Yeah.
Starbucks or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, working there. And, and as your family came, it became part of our family, and our family, your family. And
Mm-hmm.
this is so healthy. This is a village, raising children. This
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
is important. These kinds of connections are so grounding on every level of a human's life.
Yeah, it feels like it's very hard to create those kind of connections. And there's a lot of things to divide us now, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
I just
We
saw
did do it though.
we did it. I know. And like, we all live in different places now. We don't live by each other. And so we have to create it again, right? Like, we get to
Mm-hmm.
keep these connections, but we're going to have to create it again.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels really overwhelming. And I just saw this wise woman that I follow on Instagram. She was talking about creating that community and not holding out for your own echo chamber. That there's a perception now that like people must agree with you on all the concepts in order for them to be part of your community.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not real. That's what
Right
keeps you
on.
isolated. Right. And like, I would not say that all these families that, or even all of us, like, we wouldn't agree on all the issues.
Mm-hmm.
I can think like 5 topics right now I could bring up, we could argue about, right? Like,
Yeah.
we wouldn't all come to the same conclusions on, but it doesn't matter.
No.
We love our children and we're friends with each other, and we like, those are the important pieces, and we're like committed to supporting each other in motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
And we make common ground with that. We create it. And those other things, it's not that they're important or they don't matter, but like, your journey is not my journey. I don't get to decide where you arrive on the topics.
Mm-hmm.
And we can be connected regardless.
What a
Mm-hmm.
great principle. Like, do I only love people when they're easy to love? Like, how important is that for our children to know? Doesn't that give a different perspective when I have a challenge in one of my relationships? If I actually believe, well, you know what, I'm not just gonna, love them and be their buddy and their friend when they say everything that I agree with, right? That I make that space and give that respect that everybody's got a right to believe as they choose. And so start passing that on to our children, by living that and letting the conversation at the dinner table be, you know what, today I had, some trouble with my friend, but I love my friend even though we don't agree. Like, just to constantly present that principle at the dinner table. They're going to pick those principles up and use them. They are. They are. And you know what? They will be a repairer of the breach, as the good word says. That's what they'll be. They'll be strong. They'll be confident. And they
Yeah.
won't, it will help to regulate that thing we all have to learn is that, um, like another person's words to me aren't, they're not enough to take me down. Like they're not, um, I have to take them in things in context. I have to not be so sensitive that everything that's difficult for me to hear has to take me down. Because when you can make space and room and grace for somebody else if they've had a bad day or you don't agree with them or they don't agree with you, if you can make space for that, you're making space for yourself. You're showing that same grace to yourself because it will become, especially the earlier you learn it, it will permeate in all the areas of your life, including within your own mind and heart.
What do you think, what comes to mind when you think of, so not like the greatest, but a gift that motherhood has brought to you? What comes to mind just now in this conversation?
You know what? One of the big gifts motherhood has given me is an appreciation for my mother.
Mm-hmm.
It's really easy to be, well, easy to be a kid. It's easy to look at your parents, to look at your mom and say, you could have done this, you should have done this, why didn't you do it this way? And pick out all the things and all the ways that you were hurt and everything. And becoming a mother really opened my eyes to the fact that my mom was nothing short of a saint and amazing, and really did the best, truly the best she could for us with the information she had at the time. Like it was mentioned earlier, there's no manual for parenting, and each parent is probably going to screw up their kids in their own very special way. Um, but the gift that I think my mom has given me as a mother myself now is recognizing that the lessons she taught me as a mother, I can employ as a mother myself and build upon it and keep going. That's her legacy. So I guess her legacy is my gift. Long way of saying that. But, and that knowing that I also am doing the best that I can, that I believe is the best for my child. And that she will hopefully at some point become, or maybe become a mother and carry on that legacy moving forward and recognize that. I think that's the biggest gift is it's just really opened my eyes to my mother and kind of allowed a deeper relationship because of it.
Well said. I would agree with that. I would agree, like with for myself in my own experience, that was a big revelation for me. Like my mom parented 20 children, 20 children, and I was number 15, and I was a very black and white thinker. Black and white was either all good or all bad, and that stage lasted quite a while for me. And it was my husband who helped me to see, which I so appreciate, helped me to see my mother. I was very judgy of my mom as a teenager. Terrible. I was terribly judgy to my mother. I had no relationship with her. Left home at 17, and you know, uh, and I was just judgy in all the areas, just looking at what she didn't bring to the table, and that was cruel. And my husband helped me to see that, and I'm so glad. And I uh, began to foster a relationship with my mom, and yeah, it was so good. My mom died at 96, and you know what? I it was I got to say all the really great things she brought to my life to her right before she died because of that journey, because of that understanding of what that woman went through. I only had two children and like tripped over myself incessantly, right? So I I appreciate that. I would ditto that to comment, Dominic.
What would you say was your initiation to motherhood? Like, when did you feel like a mother? What was the initiation?
I just remember sitting on my bed after we got back from the hospital with little baby Ellie and thinking, this person is mine and I'm the only one here that is the mom. Nobody else is the mom. It's me. And what am I supposed to do? There should have been a college course. I didn't take that one. I took a lot of art classes. That is not helpful now in this moment. And just like the sheer panic of I could screw up this whole human being. And, I didn't screw her up.
She's delightful.
Yeah. And I was her best mom. Right, Dominique?
Best mom for her ever.
Mm-hmm.
They pick you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Chosen custom job. Yeah, I remember when definitely not feeling like a mother at all and like fighting it for so many reasons, like all the way through being pregnant with Garrett. And then when he was born, I also I remember like in the hospital room. So like it must have been just like a couple hours after he was born because I was alone, which that was like the only time I was alone with him. And I was like, again, like, oh my gosh, I get to keep him. Like he's mine. Like I made him. Like somehow when I was pregnant, I felt like he was his dad's, which was weird. Yeah. And then I was like, oh no, he's mine. And then I looked at his little feet and I always felt like I had like these weird pinky toes, and my mom has the same weird pinky toe. And I looked at his tiny foot, and he had the same weird pinky toe, and I was like, he is mine. Like,
it's that mirror.
Yeah, and I think all literal. I think all of my babies have weird pinky toes, little tiny pinky toes. Yeah, and it's funny. So I've told Garrett that story, and he talks about it all the time. He's like, let's look at our toes. Let's check them out. There's that same weird toe, just like Nana's.
I never knew that.
He's like, do you think we broke it? I'm like, no, I don't think so.
It came out like that, yeah.
Yeah.
I got pregnant unexpectedly, and but I had an inkling, and my body was doing weird things, and I was going back and forth whether or not I was going to carry the pregnancy to term or not. And I remember doing a final test. I was at work, and I was like, "Okay, I need this timing is right," because all the other ones were like kind of half yes, half no, because of whatever hormone in my body wasn't enough to really make it a glaring yes or no. So I remember doing the test, and I know like the bathroom I was sitting in, I can see it, I can smell work, like it's all there. And I waited for those 2 minutes, and the line showed up, and it was definitive. And I remember in that moment just thinking, they're mine. That's it. They're mine. I am, and I'm not going to say like there was a couple moments, but that was the first time that I really felt connection and ownership. And it was really early on. And I mean, throughout the pregnancy and throughout, there's a lot of things that I had to deal with. But I know, Melissa, you were there when B was born. And in those first couple of minutes, when they laid her on my chest, we made eye contact, and somebody did an amazing job. I think it was you, Mel, and caught the picture of Blessing looking up at me. That moment I had made eye contact with her, and all you see is her contact in the picture. But I remember that moment, and it was like she spoke to me and was like, hey mom, like I'm here. What up? And it was just, there was a couple moments. There was a couple moments of just pure connection and that feeling in it. But the first one for me was really the confirmation of pregnancy, where it was just, I'm a mother and I'm not going to be anything else. And no matter what happens through this pregnancy, I'm a mother to this being, you know. Um, and yeah, that was my initiation. Um, and yeah, it was an initiation. Yeah.
That's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Entry into motherhood, I read something somewhere that when a baby is born, the mother is reborn, or the woman is reborn
Mm.
into being a mother. And I don't think that is limited to biological process of birthing a child. I think that when a child or a being enters your heart and you feel that desire and that need to nurture, you are reborn as a mother. And, for myself, I have one bio kid, and as I mentioned earlier, I have three adult stepchildren who I had no hand in raising whatsoever. And yet, they are just as deeply ingrained in my heart as Blessing is. And at the end of the day, I just think of all the women who are listening to this and maybe considering their own mothers because of Mother's Day, or considering their journey into motherhood, or whether they're even going to become a mother. And I think it's just important to acknowledge and recognize that motherhood finds you where you're at. And not all of it is biological. Sometimes it is just an adoption of the heart. Um, or sometimes it's just a connection and you just feel a call. And I think, I know for myself, I have my own biological mother, but I had many mothers growing up, as we mentioned earlier, that I can reach out and talk to, and I know will offer me a safe and loving and kind space. And I have sisters through those motherhoods that have supported me through my journey as a mother, through my journey as a woman. Um, uh, it's the matriarchal connection is really strong, and I think can make a woman's life, can make a child's life, um, so much more enriched when that part is embraced. And I'm just actually just very grateful for you ladies and for all the mothers and women that helped raise me and helped is involved in raising my kid, whether by distance or close.
Hmm. Yeah, you definitely don't have to birth children to be in the mother archetype. Like that's part of our right, like RITE right, that all women go through. Right. So like around, I believe it's like around 25 that you start to enter that mother archetype, and you might be the precious auntie, or you might be birthing ideas and projects and mothering those into reality. But we all, yeah, that's a right we all go through.
Mm-hmm.
So, just my closing thoughts on our conversation here is kind of like to recap, and like I speak to like to all the women that are listening to this, but I suppose primarily to the women that are in my stage of life, the nanas and the elder women, that it's still really important that we model to the women that are younger than us and to the children that still come to our knees, and that our way to stay connected to one another and to find one another and and to find ourselves is through the path of vulnerability, to own what's yours. It's so important to teach our children to own what is theirs, and that's by modeling. We've got to model that. That doesn't stop because I'm a nana. It's and it's very seducing to stand on outside of that you know what? We've spent too much time on the outside of that place. We've got to move into that place of vulnerability, own our stuff, and make space, a safe space for the other women and children that are coming after us.
When I started this podcast, I was, I think, primarily wanting to feature birth stories, like sovereign and free birth stories, women who birth in power and enter that rite of passage, in a way that, like, I wish all women could, and it wasn't taken from us in various ways. So I wanted to feature those, and then also some stories of wise women. And I was thinking, like, where are the wise women? Like, where's that? And in my mind, it was like probably like the next generation of wise women. Like, I know my mom's a wise woman and I can call her for things, but I like don't really know that many others. That's what I thought. Like, I got no wisdom in my life. Where is it all? And so then I started this podcast and I put it out to some communities that I'm in. And it's like, I'm doing this. If you have a birth story you want to tell, or you have some wise words. And so many women reached out wanting to share wisdom that they have. And I was surprised. And but like the more I've done these conversations with women and the more women I've talked to, I realized, oh, it's us. We're the wise women. Like, it is someone out there and it's all of us, right? Like, we're the ones carrying it on. It's always us. It's not something outside of you that each woman has a piece to offer. And it's right here. It's all around you. Mm-hmm. It's anyone you want to talk to if you're open to whatever wisdom it is that they have to share.
And I think that we get tricked into thinking that we don't have anything to share and to stay in hiding. And I think, I think that happens to the older generation as well. I know my mother-in-law is like, she said once, I thought that it would be good for me to be around some of the younger moms in my community. And then I just realized that they have Google and they don't really need me. And I was like, no, we need actual people, not just words on a screen.
You know,
Please come.
It's moments like this. It's programs like this. It's so important that we change the perception in our culture about older people. Like culturally, they're elderly. In other cultures, they're the elders. We've lost our way in North America on so many levels in so many ways. And it's a call for people, men and women and men, to create these kinds of discussions, to reawaken what it is we need and to go after it. I heard a quote the other day, and it said, if you're the wisest person in the room, you're in the wrong place. And so we've all got to, we've got to reach for more. It doesn't matter what age you are. You've got to reach for more. And you have to go up the chain of experience. You do.
Yeah, that silencing starts so early. I'm like in a Jane Hardwick Collins deep dive recently. I'm just like finding all the things I can, all the things she has to say. And she talks so much about cyclical living and the importance of our rites of passage and how a woman is welcomed into her menarche, into her first blood, teaches her how to be received as a woman in her culture. And then that same girl shows up to her birth, to her first birth. And that same girl who's welcomed however she's welcomed into womanhood sits in the driver's seat. The most wounded version of her sits in the driver's seat of your life almost all the time, unless you're consciously reaching for something else, until you heal her, the layers of her, and level her up. And it's like a whole other conversation. I think you all have to come back and to have a conversation about initiating, like, what can we do for the next generation? Like, how do we heal whatever our own first story was? And what are we doing about that? Like, what's our process like on that? And what are we going to do for our daughters to initiate them in a different way? And that, like, if we could start there, like, I mean, the first rite is birth, right? Like, you're born in a certain way. And then these rites come along: menarche, motherhood, menopause. These are all opportunities, right? Every cycle, every bleed is an opportunity to, like, live that out in a smaller way, right? Each season is another way to honor the next phase that we go through. Like, we get so many opportunities. And yeah, I want to strive to be more connected to that and aware of it, rather than just letting the maiden drive the bus.
Well said.
I'm eager for that conversation.
Yeah, tomorrow? Yes. Well, thank you guys. Thanks so much for chatting.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
It was lovely. Thank you.